Hi, everyone. We're going to get started in a couple minutes. We also have 55 folks joining us remotely. Oh, 60 now. Yay, Union Days. We're just waiting for one of our panelists to come, but we might start with the dean first. Should we start? Risa? Yeah? Do you think we should start?
Let's wait 2 more minutes.
All right, we'll wait 2 more minutes. Talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah.
You should have gotten the muffin at the place.
Yeah.
No rabbit.
Yeah. I know. I've been. Yeah. So okay. Okay. So we go all. Yeah.
You're going to use this?
I forget.
Yeah.
We didn't even get we got a really good muffin.
Make sure you got like an avocado toast. I got one.
Those are my favorite. I was just in New York and I got like a smoked salmon bake. I've never had something so good in my life. There's no good fish places in Buffalo. We're on a lake. No, you don't. It's definitely poison. So yeah.
They're like lions. It's so cute and little, like literally I'm playing and I'm like, oh, that was good.
I think that Ithaca was not like I love the necklace. It's literally not even one whole. It's not even one whole like. It's just like yep, we're a little 3 spots. 3 spots.
Okay, let's get ourselves underway here. Welcome, I'm Alex Colvin, Dean of the ILR School. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all to today's first event of our Union Days 2022, the moment for a movement, Starbucks and the slow drip of starting a union. Union Days are one of our key events of the year. It's ILR's annual event celebrating the labor movement. It's one of the programs put on by ILR's Worker Institute, which is our institute that organizes a lot of our work with the labor movement, both traditional unions and new labor organizations. They do both applied research and also educational programs that inform our understanding of critical issues for labor today. I want to thank them for all their hard work putting together today's event and the Union Days program in general. This first Union Days event is also being co-sponsored by ILR's Buffalo Co-Lab, which is Buffalo Co-Lab. as you all know, is our presence in Western New York, right in the heart of Buffalo, and they do great work there in the Western New York region. And Buffalo obviously has been playing a leading role in the Starbucks organizing, really kicking off and leading the way for the rest of the country. So really looking forward to hearing the Buffalo perspective. And Cathy Creighton, the director of the Co-Lab, will be moderating today. So we'll hear a little more from her in a few minutes. I also just want to thank all of the faculty, staff, and students who worked on putting together this event. I know a lot goes into it. Those of you on Zoom, there's always the tech workers who make sure that that actually happens. So a big shout out to all of them. So thank you to them. Before I get into today's event, reminder, there is a second Union Days event next week, Friday, April 29th from 2:30 to 4 p.m. Again, here in Ives 105 and by Zoom. And the title of that event is From Retail to Tech to Universities, Unionizing for Equity in All Workplaces. And that will include some speakers or union activists from across many types of organizations and workplaces, from graduate student employee unions to department stores to the tech industry. And there'll be more publicity about that. So it should be a great event as well. But today we're here to talk about the organizing going on at Starbucks, one of the most interesting and innovative and exciting events in the labor movement in recent years. As I'm sure we all know, Starbucks is really ubiquitous in America. You find them across the country. We get to know the baristas who work there. We see them making our lattes, warming up our breakfast sandwiches. And for many of us, that's a key part of why we like going to the place, because we get their cheery presence, we get to know them, and that's what draws us in. But they are also workers, and as any worker is entitled to a fair wage, fair working conditions, and that's what the conversation is really about. Now, union representation is something that historically has not been heavily associated with Starbucks. I actually used to live in Vancouver, Canada in the early 1990s, and that was the only previous instance in North America where we actually had union representation at some Starbucks. There was a small group, the ones I used to patronize in downtown Vancouver, that organized briefly. Sadly, their bargaining was not sustained, but it was an innovation that was significant, and they were up against a lot of headwinds then. The company was not supportive of the bargaining relationship, and they struggled with that. In fact, my first academic article in labor law was about some of those difficulties of organizing these small units up against a large multinational corporation. That's what makes this organizing wave so interesting and in many ways inspiring. Right? We're seeing organizing going on in the industry where we had not seen it happening before. It's spreading across the whole country in a way that's really fascinating. In parts of the country where unionization has really seemed like an endangered species. And so this is a really significant change from what we're used to seeing, and something that we really need to take a close look at, think about the important questions. Why is this happening? What's going on? What are the barriers that the workers organizing here are facing? How are they responding to that? And I think we're going to have a really fascinating discussion today from our panel. We've got an amazing panel of speakers that I'm going to be introduced in a moment, and also workers from Starbucks who've been organizing themselves, and so really special to be hearing directly from them. I'm going to turn it over now to Cathy Creighton, who's going to be our moderator today. But I just want to thank the panelists for all coming here and speaking to us today. Really appreciate that.
Thank you so much. This thing is not working. John, I'll use this. Hey, y'all. I'm so happy to be back at ILR after next month will be 35 years since I graduated. So let's give it up to ILR. Woo! We're going to make this a worker-centric panel. And so first, I want to thank so much the Starbucks workers who came here with their own time today to join us, to talk about what they've been through in this movement that is really inspirational. In the 35 years since I was here and when I left, there's been no greater time for the labor movement. I'm so thrilled to be alive during this period of time, and it's due in large part to these people. So let's give it up for them. So my work colleague, Art Wheaton, sitting in the front row, and I were thinking, wow, we need, like, all the stuff that's happening in Buffalo with the labor movement bubbling up. We got to go to campus and talk about it with students. And then with Professor Leibowitz, we became part of the Union Days. And so we brought together a panel. We have, in addition to the Starbucks workers, we have ILR grad Mike Dolce, who is a lawyer for Starbucks Workers United. And Mike was also a High Road Fellow. So let's give it up to Mike. Very fancy panelist, Mark Gaston Pearce. He was not an ILR grad, but he was arts and science class of 1975. Mark worked for the NLRB, and then he was a union side lawyer. We formed a firm together in 2002 until one day the phone rang. And it was the White House, and they called and asked Mark if he wanted to be nominated to be on the NLRB. He said yes. He left me and became the chairman. His staff loved him so much and did so much for labor that they created these pins when President T came in. We don't want to say his name. When he came in, that Mark, they had these pins and they called him chairman for life. So Mark is my chairman for life, and he's going to talk to you about what's going on in Washington. But first and foremost, how we're going to run this. So we want to have you guys ask these folks a lot of questions. And so we're hoping to talk for like 45 minutes and then have you ask questions for the remainder of the time. So I'm going to turn it over to Michelle Eisen. What do you call Michelle? The face of what?
Face of American
No.
Yes, Michelle is the face of American movement. She has an unlikely story, and she's going to talk about Starbucks overview the campus. Give it away, Michelle.
Is this mic working? Can you guys hear me? Yes? Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to be here. I figured the best way to start would just be to give you a brief history of where this campaign started. And then pass it over to these amazing folks. We've got some partners from the Memphis store. Memphis 7 who were fired by the company when they were trying to organize their store. The store, which has a vote count actually coming up this Monday, which is very exciting. Angel is a fellow Buffalonian. She's at the Depew store. A store also that was recently unionized at the beginning of March. Unfortunately, Angel is another partner that suffered from the company. They fired her shortly after her store was able to unionize. And we've got Beck and Benjamin, who are from the recently unionized one of the Ithaca stores here. So I think we'll go back a little bit. I'll try to keep this as brief as possible because it feels like it could go on forever, and I'm not going to allow that to happen. Back in 2019 in Buffalo, Spot Coffee was able to unionize. And I take us back there because that was the first time I think a lot of the baristas in Buffalo, Starbucks baristas in particular, came to the realization that it was possible to unionize an industry like coffee shops, which is just not something that you hear about. So Spot Coffee was able to unionize. That got some of the Starbucks partners in Buffalo talking about that. And then the pandemic hit. So before anything could get off the ground at Starbucks, we had to deal with the pandemic. What I do think, though, is that, I can also check. What I do think, though, is that the pandemic inevitably is what got at least the Starbucks workers to this point. I don't know that in 2019, that the stage had been set appropriately to take on a global company like Starbucks. But I do know that after we were put in the position to work through this pandemic by a company that didn't take care of its workers during that time, then the stage was set to do this. So by what I mean by this, I've been with the company since 2010. So by summer of 2021, when this campaign started, I was just coming up on an 11-year anniversary, and I was deciding to leave the company. I was done. They had put us through the ringer with the pandemic. We had a CEO, Kevin Johnson, who was on multiple financial news shows, sometimes daily, it seemed like, announcing that this company in the middle of the pandemic was pulling in record-breaking profits. He was going to the board of directors and asking them for a $40 million bonus based on his service, on what a great job he did. And we were not seeing any of that. Those of us, the workers on the floor every single day, whose, the profits were being built off of our labor, we're not seeing any of that. I had coworkers who, couldn't pay their rent and put groceries in their fridge at the same time. And I've got a CEO who is, asking the board for a $20 million bonus based on the profits that were brought in. I was tired and I was feeling really let down by a company that professed to be better. And I was going to leave. I decided I was going to wait. Starbucks refers to its employees as partners. Historically, that came about because we actually do have shares in the company. Sometime in the early 90s, the company decided that it was going to give stock grants to its employees, which is why that term was coined. It has since then been used in a very manipulative way to try to tell us that the people at the top making $4 million a year and myself down at the bottom making $15 an hour are in some way the same. So that's where that comes from. But because we have stocks, they vest annually, and come November of 2021, I was going to walk away. I was going to wait for those stocks to vest, and I was going to walk away. And then a coworker approached me and said, "Hey, can we get a coffee after work?" Which is a very bizarre statement to make. And I thought she was going to ask me for some advice on moving up. We had a shift supervisor position coming open at the store, and I've been with the company a while. So a lot of times younger baristas will ask me my opinion on that. And I just really thought that's what it was going to be. And so I said, sure, we can do that. And we met a few days later. She did not want to sit in our cafe, which was fine. I assumed other people were going to be up for this position, and that was probably why she didn't want to be overheard. And we went out the back door. It was a beautiful August day. And I said, so what's up, Jazz? And she leaned over and she very quietly whispered. Now we were outside we're not in earshot of anybody, so whispering was not necessary, but she very quietly whispered, I just wanted to know what you thought about Starbucks unionizing. And I was like, what? And I made her repeat herself because I thought I didn't hear her correctly, and she was whispering, and she said it again, and I said, nothing. I've never thought about it. It has never crossed my mind. Never would I have thought that it would be something that I would be willing to fight for. Never did I thought it would be something that was possible. But you know what? We've got 20 minutes. Let's take a walk and tell me everything you've got. And she laid it all out. There'd been probably about 50 baristas from various stores in Buffalo that had been talking over the last few weeks. They were in the process of forming an organizing committee. And we were at the point now where we thought we had enough power, organizing power and leverage to go for it. And we got back to my car and she said, so what do you think? And I said, here's my questions. Can I be fired for this? What's the legal behind it? Stuff that I didn't know. I didn't know anything. I was completely naive. And she gave me all of the information she could. And I said, you know what? I think let's go for it. Because the only other option for myself was to walk away from a company I'd invested over a decade of my life in, or we could try to work from the inside to make it better. Did I know what any of that meant at the time that I said, sure, put my name on that letter to the CEO of this multi-billion-dollar company? No, I couldn't at all foreseen what was going to happen. I just knew that it sounded like the only viable option. And then that was it. That we were off to the races. The company found out, I think about 72 hours later, someone leaked it. We had to go public the next day. Elmwood, which is the store I'm at, which is the first one to win their union, filed a week later. And then we dealt with what a multi-billion-dollar company does to try and stop a union drive, which is everything you can possibly think of. And it got us to the point of the December 9th vote count where Elmwood was victorious. We were counted with 2 other stores, one of which was certified a little bit later because of challenges, and one of which did not win. And this store that did not win didn't win because these workers didn't want this union. They had a significant majority when they filed their petition. They lost because the company came in and employed such horrific union busting tactics that people were scared. They terrified these workers into voting against their own interests. And that's where we find ourselves now. We have just filed Mike, I'm gonna make this number up, but I think somewhere around 230 petitions have been filed across the country. Just yesterday, we won our 26th store, which was the roastery in Seattle. Crown jewel in Howard Schultz's cap. That was what he said, the culmination of the business had been working towards this store. So the fact that 2 of the 3 roasteries in the United States are now unionized, I think says exactly what we've been saying, is that your workers want this. This is not a fluke. This is the will of your workers, and it should be recognized as such, and you should get out of the way. So that's where we are right now. I'm gonna stop talking and pass it on to some of these other amazing workers who have sacrificed so much just to have this right. And in spite of everything they've been put through, are still here fighting this fight, you know, and not even getting a paycheck anymore from this company, and still saying that this is a fight that needs to be fought and they're gonna do it. So I'll pass it on to our Memphis partners, Bretta and Kylie, and we can just go down the line.
So if you told me like 5 months ago at the new year that I would have been fired, I no longer would have been making coffee for my favorite people, and I would be in Ithaca talking to you guys today about my experience of being fired from a multi-billion-dollar company, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have called you crazy, if I'm going to be completely honest, but here we are. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our termination and how we went through the process of filing and everything, because I don't mean to toot our store's horn a little bit, but I feel like along with Buffalo, we were a very significant store to file for unionization. So back in October of 2021, when Elmwood Partners were on strike and they were being locked out of their store and everything, we, myself, our former manager, Amy Holden, Beto Sanchez, and Nikki Taylor, 2 of the other Memphis 7, we were watching the live streams of everything happening in Elmwood, and we have the thing that we call trauma bonding in our store. We're a store. We're a store that has gone through a lot. So seeing what Elmwood was fighting for and how they were fighting for the dignity that they deserve, we thought it was about our time that we filed for unionization. So we started talking a little bit more. We spent those couple of months getting our committee together and everything. And on January 17th, yes, January 17th, we got a text from Nikki. She's like, hey, do you guys want to be a part of this meeting with the Starbucks Workers United representatives? And we all just jumped in and we were like, sure. So we were talking to them about what the process looks like, what we're going to want to do for the process, how we're going to want to collect the ballots and everything, or not the ballots, but the union cards and everything. Yes, thank you. But we were talking about that process, and it was Martin Luther King Jr. Day night. And Martin Luther King Jr., he's very significant in Memphis. I mean, he literally was assassinated maybe 5 miles down the road from our store. So it was a very significant day for us. And Richard stopped for a second. He was like, do you guys just want to file tonight? Because we weren't planning on filing and going public for like another week. So we were there that night and he's like, let's do this today. And we all agreed. So we went public on that day, and it was huge for us. We immediately got news outlets being like, hey, we want to talk to you guys and we want to know why this is important to you guys and why you chose this day specifically. And so January 18th, 19th, give or take. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm really bad with dates. But we had a news crew come in. We were shutting down the store early, but they came in while we were still open. And Starbucks has a rule where if it is 10 minutes after closing, you don't have to wait till 10 minutes after closing until you have to tell customers like, hey, we're trying to close. Like, if you could wrap up what you're doing, that would be really nice. But obviously, like, more polite than that. But we were But we were at that point where like they were more than welcome. They were more than welcome to stay in our store, and we were not pushed. We treated them just like any other customers. And we went through our news interview. The reason Starbucks was upset about that is because we've asked them basically on camera to the public. We told the public how it was. We told them what our working conditions were like. We told them how we were being mistreated and we were not getting the benefits or the dignity that we deserved as essential workers in a global pandemic. So after that, we had a person from Partner Resources, which is basically just HR, and our district manager came in. They were like, so what happened this day? They were just asking random questions. Like they were pulling policies that we had never heard of before or had only ever gone over like once that were not enforced whatsoever. And they were trying to pin that as like, you guys are breaking all these rules, you guys are not doing what you're supposed to, and everything like that. Like I was personally accused of stealing a bag of coffee that I could have gotten for free the next day if I really wanted it. That was on the shelf, and I bet you $5 it's still there today. But no, so we went through that, and Memphis went through an ice storm, and we were out of power for a week and a half. And our manager texted the 7 of us that were in that interview, and she was like, hey, can you guys come in for a meeting about getting the store back up and everything? We were like, yeah, we can come in. That next day, I woke up and panicked because I'd seen that 2 of my coworkers had been fired, and I was the next person to go in. So I literally woke my boyfriend up. I'm like, I'm gonna get fired. I'm not gonna have a job today. Like, I'm not gonna have anything anymore. Sorry, I know that's a little bit negative, but it was a very scary time. I mean, you know, you put all of your time and effort and care into this job that you genuinely enjoy, and then all of a sudden it's ripped from you because you wanted something better. So, you know, so the 7 of us ended up getting fired that day. And we've been fighting. We've become full union organizers now. We're doing everything with Starbucks Workers United. I'm doing things with things in Memphis itself, because Memphis, like Buffalo, is starting to grow a lot more in unions, especially for restaurant workers. So I know I've been a part of that. We've just been fighting and telling our story and making sure that workers across the country know that even if this happens, it's still important to keep fighting for what you're doing. Because even though the 7 of us were fired and it dropped morale for a little bit, we have our vote on Monday, like Michelle said, and we are going to win. Like, we are. Mostly just excited. We're about to come back, and we're very excited to come in and show them that even if you drag us down and kick us out, we're going to come back, and we're going to come back stronger than ever, and there's not anything you can do about that. Your turn.
Can you hear me? Okay. So, yeah, like kind of what Kylie was saying, we do keep in contact with the workers that are still in the store. We're all super close. We are, like she said, family in there. We try to bond with each other. Definitely now it's definitely stronger. Even with like the new partners that they're bringing in, we open them up, like we bring them in with open arms. We're like, hey, you're family too now. Like, we got you, protect you. What do you need? Because right now, like, they're not getting any training whatsoever. They're just kind of getting like thrown into the fire, and they're like, oh my God, I'm drowning. And we're like, no, you know, we got you, and everything like that. They're just really trying to do, you know, any and everything that they can do to kind of sabotage us. And so, like, you know, now we have new partners like calling us and it's like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. They're just leaving me by myself. It's like 2 of us in here working. Like, what am I supposed to do? This is only my 2nd day working here. And we, you know, try to help because we're on the outside now. We can't really do anything on the inside. They actually really don't want to let us in the building at this point. They try to, you know, close our cafe down to make sure we can't go in and things like that. And they try to tell all the new partners like, hey, y'all, they're dangerous out there. Those people picketing outside, they're dangerous. They have, well, they used to have, I don't know now, if they have security guards, like actually in the store from corporate surveilling us. And then they had somebody outside surveilling us too. Spies, coming up, people, yelling on the street when we're outside picketing. It's just been really crazy. But our group, we're very excited and we're centered and we're a rowdy bunch. We're very expressive and very loud. So I don't think we're going to, go anywhere anytime soon.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm Angel. I'm also from Buffalo, and then I am one of the most recently fired workers out of Buffalo as well. It's been a really fun 2 years with the company. I had 10 minutes of training, and that was all I ever got. Then I was promoted to a supervisor, and I wasn't trained until 7 months later. They needed somebody because they forced somebody else out because they overworked my other supervisor to the point where they couldn't even perform their own day-to-day tasks anymore. So they had to leave the company. And actually they didn't leave the company, they demoted themselves, and then the company forced them to leave. So Starbucks has been waging psychological warfare on all of its employees. I won't even allow us to call ourselves partners because I don't think any of us feel like a partner, nor did we ever. Starbucks has refused to allow us to feel that way. They have purposely pitted us against each other, especially at my store. And I hate using it, but my store really was kind of the battleground and the center where Starbucks really tried everything, anything and everything. And so they're like, well, what can we do here that can force them at Memphis out? What can we do here that'll force them to stop talking in Ithaca or stop them from ever talking in Ithaca? I used to be an opener, then I was a closer. Then for 3 months, I was working every single shift during the week, and opening is 5 a.m. and closing was 11 p.m. I wasn't a clopener. I would be an open and then closer, but because they know they couldn't do that. And then there would be times where all of a sudden a random manager would just randomly start bawling their eyes out about their love for the company and how they wouldn't have anything in their life, how they would, and they have, how they would leave their families to do anything they could for this company, which they have. I have a district manager training now in my region who's from Illinois, who left her family because what she said to my store during a store meeting is she cares more for this company than her own family. She said that, we have it recorded and everything. It's hurtful because you should care about your family, and we care about our family, and we didn't see that from upper management. What we saw was an onslaught of 5 random support managers from across the country that we never met before, who are saying, what's wrong, what's wrong, what's wrong? And I'm like, I have been putting in what we would call tickets, basically these calls to like an electrician or somebody to fix our espresso bar or something like that, or our floors, because our floors are broken. And I know you guys know this too. You would have puddles, you would have flies coming out of your floor for absolutely no reason. And be like, what's wrong? And I was like, you guys have never once answered a call. Every time we call, you ignore us, and you still do it. And they have been doing that to this day. I got a concussion back in September. I passed out in the store, and I had to find my way to the emergency room. No compensation. I still haven't gotten compensated for my week out. The day I came back, it happened to somebody else. Every single day, I have taken a pic. Well, I'm not there anymore, but every single day I was there, I would take a picture of the exact thing that caused my concussion, and I have it in a little saved folder with a little OSHA violation on top of it. And I expressed that to the managers almost every single time they were in store. This is an OSHA safety violation. How are we going to fix this? Are you going to fix this? When is this going to get fixed? They've been telling us since I started 2 years ago that we were going to get a remodel. It's been 2.5 years. It's all performative. And that's the thing with these that's the thing with transnational corporations. They only care about their shareholders and the money that they can get in their pockets. So whatever they can do to their employees, they will do, and they have done, and we've seen. I've literally been told that I'm the reason why my store has fallen apart when I was one of 2 supervisors at one point. There were 2 of us running that store. I wasn't the one making sure that that store fell apart. I was the one of 2 people making sure it held together. So what Starbucks does truly is psychological warfare. It is trying to tell you that you aren't good enough, that you never were good enough, that everything you've ever done was never good enough to be heard. And that's not fair to any single individual, because every single person's voices matter and their stories matter. And that's why we're standing here, well, sitting here and telling you guys that right now. It's because, you know, I might be this little 4'10", 23-year-old, but you know, I'm not gonna shut up when somebody keeps abusing me at this point. You know, I think a lot of us dealt with that in our childhoods and stuff like that. That's something a lot of people can attest to. And that's what I've loved about this campaign, is it really gave me my voice. There's a really great organizer, Colin O'Malley, which knows Risa, who, you know, got me in contact with this right here. And if it wasn't for him, if it wasn't for Michelle and the Bretta and everybody near me, I wouldn't have the voice that I do have now. And, you know, they fired me on April Fool's Day, and I really thought it was a joke. And the joke is that they thought they could shut me up.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Mclean, or Beck. I work at the College Avenue location right down the road. Right now, I am on a leave of absence for mental health. Reason being is, I mean, I've worked at Starbucks, or at this Starbucks, for almost 5 years now, and I've been a shift supervisor for 4, and just like you, I was one of 2 shift supervisors at one point. I was working like 60 hours a week. That was a while ago, but it's just been a long journey with Starbucks and how they treat us. But the reason I'm on a mental health leave now, what pushed me over the edge was a sustainability issue. It was just my manager bringing in these giant bulky plastic containers that are not needed at all. They just are plastic in our store when like everything comes in their own box. I don't know why we need these giant plastic containers. And I just had like a total mental breakdown on the floor, like panic attack mode on the floor. The store was closed because we were reorganizing everything, but and I had this panic attack in front of my manager about this and like explained it to her and like why I'm freaking out, hyperventilating in front of everyone. And she just had 0 sympathy for me. She didn't apologize once. She just said, if you cannot keep your composure, like it says in the shift supervisor approach, then I cannot have you working. And so I'm like, you know what, screw it, I'm out of here then. Like, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna talk to my sister about it, and I'm gonna talk to her about going on a leave of absence, because I can't work in this anymore. The disrespect and the lack of just them hearing me, like it's literally like they don't even hear us. And I don't know, for me, it has a lot to do with the managers and how they treat us. And I don't know, just, I mean.
Can you talk about the response to the union movement? What happened when you guys?
Yeah, well, when we announced the unionization, it was literally the next day that we had, well, I don't even know what the title is, but it's like this new position at our store that's basically, yeah, support, like they come in to like make sure that we are doing everything to standard and everything, but this did not exist before the union. And this man was like hired in off the street, and he was in the next day and just like coaching everyone on every little thing. And I don't know, I mean, it's been, I don't know. Yeah, but besides that, I don't know. It's been a lot. I mean, yeah, I'm on a mental health leave. Like, yeah, my brain. Oh, Benjamin, you wanna go?
No, hear me through
Might have to
this?
get a little bit closer, but.
So, what about now? Is this good? So my name is Benjamin, and I also work at the College Town location right up the street. To speak to what Becca was talking about, we kind of had to announce early because publication was going to do a story about it, and they released it the day before we were planning to. And the next day we had support managers we'd never met come into the store from, a lot of them from out of state. We had some from California come in, and they basically just started like coaching us, which is a Starbucks term for you, like, it's kind of like the Starbucks rhetoric of the matter is that we all have to coach each other to keep people up to standard, but it's kind of a thing that feels like it's passive aggressive and makes everybody not want to talk to each other. And our new support managers came in under the guise that our store had not been up to standard for a long time. But the things they were telling us were standards didn't really seem like them. They were very arbitrary things. They had me like policing people's dress code, which is a very uncomfortable thing to have a giant man come up to a lot of the like small women I work with and tell them that I noticed that their pants were not safe for work. And ever since then, it's just kind of been a barrage of this worked at this store, so let's try it here. You kind of notice the patterns once you hear other people from other stores talking about things like that. I'd say every other day for the past couple months, we've had like new standards being thrown at us, kind of like, just like from like the dress code things to now we have to clean things in certain ways that were not like a rule before, like other people were saying. But yeah, we walked out on strike about a week ago because we have a grease trap in the back of the store that I'm pretty sure isn't even connected to our store because Starbucks doesn't really produce grease. And it overflowed all over our back room, just it's like old grease with like pieces of, it looked like chicken, I don't know. Sorry,
It's not funny, it's probably
I'll
just.
censor myself. But I called our manager and he basically told us that we were to stay open. He turned mobiles off for a few minutes so we could go back and clean it. But it was all over the place and we were already 2 people down from Collins, something our manager also didn't help us with. So I informed him that I was closing the store because it seemed like a health hazard. There were customers out front saying that it smelled like toilets. And he demanded we stay open and hung up. And as we were gathering our stuff and getting everybody out of the store, he came in the store. It's a really hard place. You guys know College Town, it's a hard place to get to. But somehow he just showed up and he demanded we stay open. But I told them we were walking out. And so Saturday, we led a strike over that. And 2 hours later, they had a plumber out back fixing it. So striking works.
Take the mic.
Hello, can you hear me? Oh, I'm Mike Dolce. I'm actually an ILR, Google ILR. So I did the first R cases, which are the representation of the election cases for the Starbucks Worker United campaign, and been working there the whole time. Cathy just wanted me to give you like the general numbers on the campaign right now. So like Michelle said, we're about at 230 RC petitions, which are the individual store election cases. We've had 28 elections, 26 victories, 2 losses. The 2 losses are not actually certified results because there's outstanding objections. Objections just basically mean all this crap that they're talking to you about right now, all this unlawful stuff that the employer has done has impacted the result. And until those objections are actually, considered and then ruled on by the board, the results are not final. So there's actually no losses so far. That's kind of an important. Like you can tell how traumatized a lot of the people are because of what this company's done to them, and it's like difficult for them to talk about. I mean, just be secondhand. It's almost kind of difficult to watch it again because like listening to countless stories, listening to all the recordings and everything they have from all the different managers, all the gaslighting that's been going on, just to like get an idea of the ridiculousness of it. So Angel, you can see the little tiny like the nose ring that she has in. When she was hired, she had the exact same nose ring in. During the interview with the store manager, said, "Hey, is this like cool with the dress code and everything?" The manager said, "Oh yeah, no, that's no problem, whatever." Unionization hits. Angel's a leader. Angel actually testifies in the board proceedings, so actually we have 8A4 charges for her because we're saying they're retaliating against her for participating in board hearings. As soon as she does all that, Angel, you need to remove your nose piercing in 2 weeks. It's not compliant with store policy. This is your final written warning. If you don't take it out, you're fired. She was hired with it, explicitly asked about it, and worked there for 2 years with it. That's what the company's doing, okay? Like the Memphis stuff, they literally, they closed the store early that day. So they're trying to say, oh, like the people were in the store after hours stuff. There's the 10-minute rule that they were talking about. And they're literally just doing these interviews, right? There's no problems with the property or anything. And they pull rules out of the hat that they've never enforced before. And obviously, so where are we at? 230R cases, we got about 30 elections, 30 units. By the end of this month or next month, there's gonna be 50 or 60 unionized stores. We gotta obviously keep increasing that number, keep getting market presence. Ithaca was the first full market to have all unionized stores. That's a big deal. Eugene, Oregon, so like where the University of Oregon is, that'll be the second thing. And this is a small city, that's a mid-sized city. They got like almost 200,000 people. That'll be fully unionized hopefully by, within, I think, about a month. And then, we got to win obviously, but they just won unanimously out there. So I'm thinking they will. And then that'll obviously gain a lot of leverage at the bargaining table. So this is an ongoing thing. And then, so just to contextualize all the unlawful stuff. So those are the C cases, right? Those are, the ULP cases. And so we've had outstanding, our region 3 in Western New York has been a little slow, but we have some more aggressive regional directors that are pursuing C cases. So we have 3 official complaints from one region out west. And then the Memphis case, they've already found merit on the 7 terminations. They always offer the company, they can settle, the company will not settle. So there will be a complaint filed in the Memphis one. And then in the coming months, there's gonna be, we're about to hit 100 C cases nationwide. And that, I filed 3 this week. And that's just one attorney in just one area. And I'm got many more to come. So if we're about at 100, I said the number the other day, I thought we'd probably get to maybe 300 by the end of this. And and also some of the charges, when we file one charge, we'll have a store specific charge that encompasses 50 violations. So it's not just like one violation happened, some of the 883 stuff.
They don't know what 883 is.
Just in case. Go ahead.
Okay. So 883 is it's like a retaliation charge. So everybody, several people up here have 883 charges with their names listed on the face of the charge. So some of those are like Angel's termination, I think it's an individual charge, but some of the other store specific things that have stuff such as intense increased surveillance. The surveillance stuff, for instance, I'm gonna talk forever and ever, and that's bad. But the surveillance stuff, just to give you a perspective on that, because they're all, you can feel the trauma, but like just, objectively, right? Before the union campaign started, there's one store manager in the store. That store manager is supposed to be on the floor for about 15 hours a week. The stores are open for how much? Like what? They're open like almost 14, 15 hours a day, so almost 100 hours a week, 15 hours a week. Then unionization comes. This happened in Buffalo. They literally brought 100 or more out of state, every state you can imagine, high level people all over the place. Every store got at least one additional manager. Elmwood, Michelle's store, got 6. And we have recordings. We have a ton of evidence. They're really screwed. But so they explicitly told the store managers, you need to staff a manager for every working minute at all these stores. And we have affidavits from all the workers saying that I never spoke to a coworker with a manager more than 10 feet away from me after we filed. The intensity of what they had to deal with. And then of course, that's just like them watching. Then there's all the micromanaging. Like, oh, you're not doing this. Oh, imagine working a job for 5 years and then you file to advance your interests, to actually make your workplace better. And then in response to that, they start to say like, oh, you're doing this wrong, even though they don't even know what the hell they're doing because they're not even store level employees. So it's just really degrading stuff that they've had to deal with. But I gotta say too, my job's easy. I don't have to do anything. All the heavy lifting is done by these people. And their organizing work is, I know that's why we're here, it's why there's a good turnout here, it's why it's a national story, but it's very impressive how the workers have completely controlled the narrative. They've obviously used social media very well to do that. They've been 10 steps ahead of the company every step of the way. Actually, funny story on that, Michelle and a couple other workers from Elmwood legitimately, right when they filed in the way beginning, predicted if this actually takes off, I guarantee they'll force the CEO out. Howard will come back and we'll try to take the reins or whatever. And so that was in August. So they're about 8 to 9 months ahead of the company. And so I would anticipate them to continue to kick butt. So that's like the current status. I don't know.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Mike, when I left the firm, Mike took my spot, and he's kicking butt. Thanks, Mike. And I'm proud that he's an ILR grad and a high roader. So, Mark, what is happening in Washington? Mark was the chairman of the National Labor Relations Board, and I just want to give a little primer for our PhD student in romance literature that won't know what we're talking about. But all labor law in the United States involving the private sector is federal labor law, and it's all enforced by the National Labor Relations Board. And Mark was the chairman of the National Labor Relations Board. So he was the highest level person at the National Labor Relations Board. So he has a lot of knowledge, and Mark was there for 7 years and then, but knows what's going on. So tell us what's happening in the Biden board, Mark, and how you can help these people.
Hi, everybody, it's great being back. I was at a union day once, and I was actually teaching a course here a few years ago. I want to say I am in awe of your commitment, gang, and your heartfelt articulations of what you went through, and your drive and the spirit that is spurring on crowds like this and crowds across the country. So I definitely applaud you. Now, I of course, Cathy gave you the abbreviated version of how I got on the NLRB, but I kind of like that version. That'll be the one in the movies. The challenge of the NLRB is process. And as you who are ILR students have already learned, the National Labor Relations Act came out of the assembly line for the purpose of doing big things and heavy lifting. However, they gave it 3 wheels and an inferior engine, intentional. So what we've been dealing with is a board that can be very active at one point, depending on the administration, and completely absent at another point because of another administration. The act itself is not self-enforcing. So anytime a regional director issues a complaint and it gets prosecuted and it goes all the way up and the board decides a decision that would be beneficial to workers, that decision has to be enforced in a court for it to happen. And you know who's been picking all of the judges in the last 4 years. So we got concerns about that. But what we do have right now under the Biden administration is a very activist general counsel. So Jennifer, and she's the real deal. So what is happening is a lot of the stuff that you all are experiencing is like captive audience meetings where everybody's going in and managers are bombarding you with all kinds of questions and you have no choice but to go. She is challenging those kind of practices and will be prosecuting cases where she's making the argument that if the act says you have a right to organize and you have a right to refrain, you should have the right to refrain from hearing the propaganda of the employer that is seeking to get you to vote no. So we're hopeful that that's going to get some traction. She's union petitions up 57%.
Yeah.
During my tenure at the board, we tried to streamline the processes, but those processes don't completely go away. And this is the frustration that you go through, but the energy that is happening is still getting the union petitions filed. Let's talk about what's going on at these constant Starbucks cases. Our cases mean representation hearings, because once a petition gets filed, Starbucks is not going to volunteer to an election. They're going to have this administrative hearing, and they have a right to have that administrative hearing. And guess what they do at the administrative hearing? They say, well, you know, a unit of just a single store is not an appropriate unit because we got managers that show up at other stores, and sometimes some people call in sick and other people from another store goes. And so everybody in the whole city should be in one bargaining unit. And then the board listens to that and says, well, you know, there's a presumption for a single site. So that is not going to happen. Oh, okay, we're going to appeal it. We're going to appeal it. We're going to appeal it. And then the next petition gets filed. And guess what? They make the same arguments. They make the same argument again, and it goes through that process again. But the important thing is the petitions keep getting filed, and the organization still keeps going, and folks keep pushing, because there's a lot that is going on within this period in terms of what the board might do. When people are getting fired, there are cases under consideration where you're not only going to get your back wages back, you're going to get your consequential damages back. If your credit rating has gotten screwed because you couldn't make your student loans because you had lost your job, then that is part of your make whole remedy. So they're going after all of that stuff that is ancillary that affects what has happened to you. The devastation that you've experienced is more than just the back pay that you're owed, and we're hoping that something is going to happen with that. Now I could go on and on like Mike.
Reset. Thanks so much, Mark. So, oh, there's a break for food.
We have refreshments in the back.
Refreshments, and we're gonna have a 10-minute break.
About 10 minutes for people to.
And then we want you all to stick around and ask questions. Starbucks coffee out
We're
there.
a little tired of that. Kathy, will you let them know?
Maybe different nature.
Nice to meet you. Sorry, y'all also go through both. It's not fair. You know the work that you everybody put in. Wait, they're actually listening to this long, and it's like, if you would have taught me the right place to begin, at least people are here. People are here, they're gonna know, and
If everybody wants to sit down. We're gonna do some Q&A. All right, who wants to be the first person to ask a question? Oh, we got a lot of folks. I'm gonna hand you the mic and then you're gonna ask the question. Like, I don't know, we used to do that. Run around.
Hey, we're starting. Okay.
So this question is more for the.
Making such a mess.
For the Buffalo partners. I remember hearing at the end of last year a story about Howard Schultz coming to Buffalo and giving like an anti-union speech to the active audience. And I was just trying to figure out if either of you were there, if you had any perspectives on that, or like what that deal was.
Angel was present, so I'm going to pass that over to her. I was fortunately or unfortunately not. I don't know, depending on the way you look at it. But she can give you a firsthand account of that unique experience.
Can you hand her one of them? Those mics? Yeah.
I don't know what.
I'm not sure if these are.
Does it still work without the ring? Okay, cool. Yeah, that was funny. That whole experience, it was kind of, sorry, just really eye-opening to see how disingenuous your boss is and how removed from reality he was. The really insulting thing to a lot of Buffalo is a poor city. A lot of us grew up on Section 8, grew up very poor. We know what a struggle is. And the amount of time that man said that he was from the projects had to have been at least 8 times. And that is one of the reasons why one of my coworkers ended up signing a card at that meeting, was because he grew up below the poverty line and he knew where Howard Schultz grew up. And if you do a quick Google search, you'll find out that basically where he was living was west side of Ithaca. Nothing really where he was ever actually struggling. Talked about how his father was unemployed at one point, and again, he was trying to talk to and relate to working class people, and he's never been a working class citizen. And when you try to relate to people you've never been in the same class structure in, it'll backfire on you. He even brought, and this one's really insulting, and I hate bringing it up, but he did bring up the Holocaust, and he did tell us that basically we were ungrateful for asking for more better benefits, more robust benefit packages, because I myself was not able to take out the health insurance because I am chronically ill. So I had a $2,000 deductible if I wanted to get the insurance I needed. And he told us, how his grandparents or great grandparents, I forget which other, how they told him the story of how they had to share a blanket with, you know, the other people at the concentration camps. And it was just really, it was such a sideline thing to say. Like, he was trying to relate to the demographics in a way, and he was trying to like bring it home in a way, but you do have people who are of Jewish descent. You do have people who, you know, they also have those, like, I personally don't have people that I know who have gone through that, but there were more than enough people in that room who were insulted by the way he talked about it, because he didn't talk about it in it was so toned down, pretty much. It was him just trying to talk and going on his talking points and everything like that. And the way that that captive audience meeting was set out to us was, you know, there's this really cool speaker who's going to come out, and you're going to have all this time to ask questions to the speaker afterwards and everything like that. It's going to be a good back and forth. We get there, you know, they scan our QR of our name, and also they dead named people at that event. They're obviously, Starbucks is a very progressive company, and
Quote unquote.
yeah. So they have, you know, there are people who have transitioned with the company as well, because they do provide that insurance. So they do have dead names, they have real, the people's names and everything like that. And instead of using the names that they use at their stores, they were dead named at that event. And that hit home to a lot of people, because it was so insulting, because this company also helped them be able to have that name, be able to be themselves. And they insulted them as soon as they walked in the door. And then, like, and as soon as Howard finished his speech, again, we thought we were going to have time for questions afterwards. So our good friend Gianna Reeve, she stood up and she asked him directly, will you sign the fair election principles? And like the coward Howard is, he walked away. He ran out of the room, and he let his posse of corporate spies try and swarm Gianna and try and make her sit down. They touched her and everything, like literally, like, do you mind? Grabbed her arm and everything, was like, oh, please move, you know, go back to your seat and everything like that. And it's just like, why are you so scared? Gianna's pretty much the same size as me. Why are you, this $40 billion industry, so scared of this one small little girl who's just trying to ask you to sign the fair election principles? And that's how that ended, was watching Gianna get swarmed by these corporate entities and not being able to get her voice out there, and Howard just cowarding away. And it's insulting.
Important to note that he was speaking to a room of partners who didn't really know who he was to a degree. These are a lot of partners who've been with the company for, you know, 2 years or less. Howard had stepped away, as most of you know, to run for president. And so these people, they didn't, you know, he didn't really mean anything to them. And this was the guy being flown into Buffalo on his private jet to, you know, talk to all of these workers and stop this union campaign before it could ever get off the ground. This is before any of the votes had happened. This was about 4 days before the first round of ballots was to be nailed out. It didn't go well. So it was tone deaf. It was poorly done. I don't know how you ever try to equate your workers to Holocaust survivors and think that that's going to go well. That was somehow the tone he chose, and someone allowed him to go up there and actually say those words. That person's probably been fired. So yeah, it didn't go well.
Thank you for that really great first question. Risa, do you want to read a question from our audience in the ether system?
Yes, great. And I also want to tell you all that we have lots of people who are joining us in the Zoom webinar. At one point, we had almost 100 people as well. So the room was packed. At any rate, so here's one following up from somebody out in Zoom land about Howard Schultz as well, but more in terms of the broader issue of the company as a whole. So the question is, have panel members seen any change in company behavior since Howard Schultz returned, other than the announcement to suspend stock repurchase program to, quote, invest in people and stores, close quote? Are they walking the talk?
Nothing has changed that I'm aware of. There was just recently a leaked video, I think it just hit Twitter and social media yesterday. That was a meeting between Howard and the store managers, essentially imploring them to continue to escalate their ability to get their partners to vote no for these union elections. He's done nothing except empty promises so far and scare tactics, but there's been no change in company policy. These alleged sort of, they're big talking points in these anti-union meetings, which we know are happening all over the country, are that unionized stores no longer get the same benefits, no longer have the same rights. And I can tell you as the first unionized store that nothing has changed since we unionized. Nothing, you know, we're in bargaining. That's the first step for the changes for the better. But in terms of things being taken away from us because we've unionized, it's misinformation deliberately being spread to try and stop this movement. So no, there's been absolutely no changes except him continuing to publicly pat himself on the back for what a great job he's doing.
Lisa, can I say something about misinformation? Yeah. This is a big problem with the law. Employers can lie legally as long as they don't threaten and as long as they don't promise. They can embellish, they can talk about how union fat cats are driving Mercedes-Benz and they're using your union dues to finance their cocaine habits. They can do all of that stuff. But if they say, if you come with us, we'll give you an extra donut at Christmas time. Or if they say, give us a chance and we'll raise your salary. Or if they say, if you keep this up, we're gonna close the store. All of that is illegal, but there's a wide margin and they can go right to the edge of a threat and get away with it.
We have a question from this man in the
orange.
Is
it?
Yeah, sure.
Hello?
You're good.
Okay, cool. Sorry, yeah, my hearing is not very good. Yeah, I kind of have a question more related with the strategy, but I don't know whether it's publicly talkable. So after, as you mentioned, after the unionization, you go to the collective bargaining. But also there are other like franchises of Starbucks stores in the States are still forming the union. So I'm wondering like what's kind of the balancing? How do you allocate your resources from on both sides? And because when you are in a collective bargaining, you may dare to strike or do something. I'm not saying you guys may do, but from my previous some graduate unions and also other, you may have a strike, and will that kind of affect each other? Like basically, will collective bargaining affect other stores' unionization efforts and vice versa? Yeah.
It's a great question. You're right, it is a balancing act. There's currently two stores that are at the bargaining table. Elmwood is one, and Genesee, which is the second store that was certified in Buffalo, is the other. As of right now, all of the other stores that have one are in the process of sending their demands for bargaining, but we also have a lot of stores that have petitioned and are in various points in that process. So we're walking a line. I mean, we're very aware of the fact that the company can't be at a bargaining table trying to negotiate a good faith fair contract with us while they're across the state trying to union bust in another cafe. Those two things can't exist at the same time. So what we're doing at Elmwood is we are trying to be as transparent as possible with the proposals we're putting across the table in the hopes that we can create sort of a consistency for all of these stores as they come to the bargaining table. Because right now they're being bargained on an individual unit basis. What we've also been able to do is invite people to our bargaining committee. Like Nebretta and Kylie are on our bargaining committee at Elmwood. Angel is on our bargaining committee at Elmwood. So we've created almost this national bargaining committee in spite of the company's objections, because we have a choice to put whomever we'd like on our bargaining committee. So that's allowing us to sort of keep those lines of communication open between the stores. I think these folks at Ithaca told you that they were striking while we were bargaining. So that had no effect on our bargaining, and our bargaining had no effect on their striking. That's not the way that this campaign is sort of grown and turned into. But what it does lend is every time we win a store, every time another petition is filed, we continue to gain in strength, and we start to tip that scale to, at some point, we force the company to recognize our right to organize. Because until we have that, until the company says, you know what, we're gonna get out of your way, we're gonna always be fighting this fight. But we're fighting it and we're winning. So right now we just take every day at a time and decide, I would say that we have a super clear strategy, we do, but it's a strategy that has to be adjusted basically daily, depending on what the company decides to do and depending on what wins and what stores have to strike and what sort of proposals we've decided to put across the table. It's exciting to be at that table, and it's exciting for our fellow partners to know that what we're proposing are things that are going to continue to expand on the benefits and policies that already exist within the company and continue to work towards making our work life better. So far, the company's only sent things across the table that attempt to take things away from us, which is just terrible, in terrible faith, but also it makes them look bad. I mean, they don't help themselves a lot in these cases. So there's definitely more specifics we can get into. I'm learning something new every day, and it is incredibly nuanced, but we are trying to sort of walk that line between recognizing what we're up against, but not taking for granted what we've already accomplished.
Lisa, do you have to pop in because there's a question related to this one. The question, again from Zoomland, is this is a question for the Ithaca workers. What does the timeline of collective bargaining look like now that all 3 stores are fully unionized?
We are trying to say the first week of May is when bargaining is going to be starting, but they've been pushing it back for every other store, so it might be like end of May.
Another ULP.
The common trend we keep seeing with Starbucks is them refusing to answer our email to start bargaining. So I sent out my email 3-4 weeks ago now because I was certified March 9th. And I finally got an email back from the Littler lawyers 2 days ago. And I sent that 3 weeks prior. So I'm not gonna see bargaining until May 13th. And that's something that unfortunately we have to prepare ourselves for with all these stores. It's yes, they should be bargaining May 1st, their 3-week notice kind of thing, because you need 3 weeks. Starbucks has a 3-week policy of requesting off, so they need 3 weeks to be able to figure out when they can bargain. But the unfortunate thing is what we were talking about is it's not going to be 3 weeks because Starbucks is continuously pushing back against our own narrative and their own narrative as well. And they're refusing to bargain in good faith.
We have a question from
So yeah, mine actually was, hi, I'm Zach. Mine is actually regarding their good faith bargaining. Do you guys perceive a tipping point that you feel there's a certain amount of stores that you have enough leverage to force them to the table to create that first contract? And for the Ithaca people, are you guys bargaining as one, the 3 stores as one unit because that's what Starbucks argued for? And you might have or are you guys doing it individually in individual basis as well?
So in Ithaca, it's looking like we're going to be bargaining separately just because all 3 stores in Ithaca are so different. We have a drive-through store and 2 stores you can't get to with cars. So all the problems at each store are so unique in Ithaca. I'd say up here at College Town, most of our business are mobile orders, and that's really unique for a store. So I think it's probably looking like we're going to bargain as separate stores.
As far as the tipping point goes, we acknowledge that there definitely will be a tipping point. I don't know that we can put a number on that just yet. We do know that there's only 2 stores at the bargaining table currently, and they seem to be somewhat struggling with that. So the hope is that, every time they're spending millions upon millions of dollars with this law firm trying to stop something that cat's out of the bag. It's no longer containable. So now it's a matter of how do you justify that to your shareholders? You failed thus far, And now you're going to continue to insist that, you know, there's 200 separate bargaining committees, all with their lawyer as their point person and their main negotiator. We don't have an attorney at the table. We made our demand for bargaining saying we wanted to bargain partner to partner, to use Starbucks speak. And we were told that we wouldn't be talking to a fellow partner, we would be talking to a Littler attorney. So, I mean, if there's a third party in this at the bargaining table, it's certainly not coming from the union side. And so, yes, we acknowledge that there will be a tipping point, and that the hope will be that there will be some level of a national bargaining committee that can sort of lay out the groundwork for policies and benefits that will affect all of the Starbucks unionized stores, with sort of sections into those contracts for locals. So store-specific issues. That's the ultimate goal and the ultimate hope. And we'll see how long it takes us to get to that point.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for joining us.
Other questions?
No.
One that I know I have a lot of information on. So this question is, can you go into any more depth as to what the poor working conditions at Starbucks look like during the pandemic?
I think at least everybody from each.
Do you want to let them answer?
I was gonna say, I think everybody needs to answer this one because everybody has different things. So I'm gonna start at the end, and I think everybody just says something different because we all have a different story.
Just pick your favorite.
So many to choose from. You know, I think I'm gonna start, I'm sure somebody later down the road is gonna talk about the actual protocols and process of isolation and everything. So I'm gonna talk about training. So I got hired in the middle of the pandemic. I started October 2020. So I did not have the experience like Michelle had before, what the store looked like before masks and social distancing and everything. So at the very beginning, I received maybe a day of training. So I had a day to learn how to make the 50 drinks, how to properly sequence everything, how to put food in the oven, and how to ring up certain things and what I was supposed to do in specific situations. I got a day of that. So I could definitely say I was struggling for like 3 months. Every day I was just like, I came in here, I was like, I'm gonna learn how to do this today. And my shift at the time, I had worked with the same shift every time because we only had like 3 shift supervisors when I was hired. Every day she's like, you're gonna be in the window, have fun talking to the customers. And I was like, I mean, I didn't mind that at all, but I was just like, I don't get to be on bar today. But I mean, I know that seems like it doesn't pay attention, or that doesn't relate, but it does. A lot of issues that I've been seeing and a lot of things I've been hearing in my store and everything, and it's been hurting me every single day I hear it. But because people aren't getting the proper training, they're only being stuck in one position, and it gets very tiring. You get burnt out on that same position, and you can't do other positions as effectively, and that does affect how the store is ran because you don't have as strong of a team. You don't have as fun of an experience because you want to try this drink, but you don't know how to work the bar. So how are you supposed to make that drink that you want to try, that you saw and you thought was cool? And because we've been so busy with the pandemic and everything, because at the beginning of the pandemic, almost all coffee shops were closed except for Starbucks and maybe one other one in each town. So it was just nonstop business, nonstop busyness, and you never saw a day of training at all. And right before I got fired, I was finally getting training for a position that I had been in for 5 months. I got the position as a shift supervisor, and I immediately got thrown into opening by myself. I didn't know what the fuck to do. I'm sorry, I'm like, I don't know. I can't work keys. I don't know how to turn the key. I don't know how much the safe is supposed to be at. I don't know how to do this food pull. So it was just nonstop. Like it just runs it just makes the business not run efficiently at all. Like, if I'm gonna talk from a manager perspective, is if you're not giving your people proper training, how are you supposed to run the business effectively? How am I supposed to reach that 45-second time that I'm supposed to be getting every single minute of the day? How am I supposed to make sure that my partner who's been here for 2 days can get proper training on how to make a latte, a cappuccino, how to properly aerate and foam their milk, if I have only 2 people on the floor and I have line going out to the main street and just everywhere? How am I supposed to make sure that every one of my partners has a good experience without the training that they need, without knowing what they're gonna do? Because struggling isn't fun. It's not fun. It takes everything. It takes the joy out of working at a job that promotes being a third place, that promotes you enjoying going in every single day, talking to your coworkers and customers, but you can't because you're trying to figure out what you're supposed to be doing at that time, and you can't do it, and you're getting frustrated with your manager, with your shift supervisor, with your coworkers, and with yourself because you're not getting what you need.
You can just rattle off a couple things, so Bretta, in terms of.
So one of my favorites is like safety issues. That was like one of my main reasons to want to unionize. So we have like these cabinets. Our store used to be a Taco Bell. They just slapped the Starbucks sign on it and was like, here you go. So our store is super little and just straight back. And so we bump into each other all the time, waste stuff on each other all the time. But anyway, so in our cafe, we don't have a back house where we can store our products. So they're in the lobby, like hidden behind shelves. And one of the shelves were breaking down. The managers put a ticket in. They said they're gonna fix it, never came and fixed it. One day in the middle of peak, which is like our most busy times, between like 7 and like 9 for our store, I ran to go get some syrups, and the door hinge fell off and fell on my shoulder. I told my manager. It actually happened in front of the district manager, and he just kind of looked at me and was just like, oh well, we're gonna get that fixed now. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask if I needed a minute to collect myself. He just was like, basically get back on the floor. And so I just had a problem with that. We have, like you heard, electrical issues. Our store actually caught on fire a little bit because hanging wires and puddles of water mixing together. We have things that leak into outlets, so we get electrocuted. We get burns all the time with no burn cream. I know in Knoxville they give them aloe vera gel instead of burn cream, which I think is, crazy. But things like that, just like puddles, messed up towels. We had our old store manager twist her ankle tripping over a towel. Just things like that is, crazy.
Oh, mine's real quick. Mine, COVID wise, was them telling us to not listen to local mandates and allow people to just come in, even though the local mandate said, no, you have to wear a mask. Starbucks said, no, do not follow your local mandate. Let people do whatever they want.
Specifically to the COVID issues, it was a lot of things like you don't need to follow local mandates. If you're exposed at work to COVID, if you've been vaccinated, we don't care that you've been exposed. You still have to come into work. If you had been unvaccinated, you were allowed to take paid leave, just in the event that you ended up contracting COVID. So it was just a lot of let's put profit before people. And if, God forbid, there is an outbreak, which happened at Elmwood, we'll deal with that when it comes. We're not going to be proactive about it. We're going to be reactive about it. And when we had conversations where we were able to say, do you really think that's the best thing even for business? Let's put the people out of this and let's say, is this the best situation for your business? That was just a conversation that was shut down. So where we are right now is in large part because of the pandemic, and our voices weren't being heard when our lives were being put at risk. And so now we're standing here forcing them to hear us.
I think we might need
to
the next question, unless you guys want to add to that.
I did have an answer for that. I mean, throughout all of COVID in the last 2 years, they've just been like reducing and reducing and reducing what we get if we get COVID, or like if we can go on leaves if we get COVID. Like I know just recently, or not just recently, they reduced the 10-day leave to a 5-day leave, and and now they're saying that even if you get like a rapid test that's positive, you still need to go into work, just wear a mask. It needs to be a PCR test that's positive. And yeah, so that's just ridiculous.
Wow.
So, next.
Well, that's really bad. I'm glad you said that. We have a question here, and then we haven't gotten to that side of the room.
Hi guys. Oh, sorry. Just want to thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. So I am a former barista myself. I didn't work at a Starbucks, but I never thought that it would be possible for a barista to be a union member or organized. So I was just wondering, like, what advice would you give to people who are baristas or food workers, either at Starbucks or elsewhere, who feel like they can't organize, but they want to?
I think my main thing would be to tell someone to not listen to people when they say, why would you need a union? Every workplace needs a union, because if you don't have one, you don't have a say in your workplace. So there's already a power imbalance. So like, whether you're a food worker or something that seems less essential to the outside world, it doesn't mean you don't need a union. And I think we're proof positive of that.
Also, to add on to that, advice that I would give them is just to like talk to your coworkers. Like you don't even need to like address the union. You just like, what don't you like about working here? Like, do you think that we can change that? And then like, if you're comfortable bringing it up, like then bring up the union. But yeah, just talk to your coworkers.
It doesn't matter like Benjamin was saying, it doesn't matter what industry you work in, you matter. The company needs you. You don't need the company. So that is always important to remember. Because the company needs you, you deserve the dignity that you should get as a human being, because you are a human being. You go through a ton of stuff on a daily basis. So it is important to make sure that you guys that if you feel like you need to organize and you are not getting treated like a human being, you're being treated like a robot, you need to talk to your coworkers, and you guys need to start organizing. It doesn't, like you said, I didn't think a barista could be a union member, but it doesn't matter. You deserve to have a say in your workplace. You deserve a say in the place that you were spending 8 hours every day. It doesn't matter if you're flipping burgers for $8.25 an hour, or if you're an assistant store manager at a Starbucks making maybe $16 an hour. It does not matter at all.
Great. Do you have another question, Risa, from the chat?
Well, it relates to this as well, and so you might want to build on this. The general question, I'm going to generalize it, was what advice would you give to workers who are experiencing injustice but may feel intimidated about rallying against their employers? So that's a general question. How do you overcome that? Where people say, I'd like to do this, but I'm afraid. And the specific question, the specific way that this questioner asked this was with regard to what he say to student workers who may feel intimidated rallying against their employers who also happen to be their educators. So, yeah. So it's general and specific to where we're
I think it's going to be a lot of the same answer, piggybacking on what Beck said and what Kylie said, is that there's power in numbers. There's generally a lot more workers than there are corporate or management, and you just need to talk to each other. You need to be open to hearing people's concerns from both sides, concerns as to why they may not want to do this, concerns as to why they think they should do this, and keep that conversation going. There are lots of, when we started in Buffalo, there's 20 stores in Buffalo. I think we had people from all 20 stores say maybe one sign on to the very first letter to Kevin Johnson. We are only at 9 that have filed thus far. That doesn't mean the other 11 aren't still working towards that. It just means the conversations are taking a little bit longer at those other 11 stores. So it's continued education, it's continuing to keep those lines of communication open and to be willing to allow some weakness in there. I mean, the companies are coming in and they're saying, we want you to vote no. We're not gonna fix anything yet. We want you to vote no first, and then we'll show you why you voted no. And we're going, I've never once used the words, I want you to vote yes. I've said, this is why I'm doing this. This is why I think this is best for me. Let's have a conversation about it. Forcing somebody to do something on either side of this is not the way to go about it. It's letting people know that the information is available and letting them know that you don't have all the answers. I don't know. I didn't know what I was doing. There's still a lot of things I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't even know what this world existed until 8 months ago. It's being approached by a coworker who has legitimate concerns and being willing to go find those answers for them. So as far as the educator side of it goes, I'm not entirely sure that seems like a different power imbalance, but it's a power imbalance nonetheless. There's probably similarities between, going up against a corporation where you're in a captive audience meeting and someone's talking at you who brings home a $4 million a year paycheck, and someone who brings home $20,000 a year. So there's that kind of power imbalance, I think, that you have to be aware of. I'd be interested to have a deeper conversation about that and see if there's some other similarities that we could maybe come up with that would help guide them.
You may get approached by people. Go ahead. Yeah, Mike, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I wasn't, again, I'm not an lawyer. But one thing just from like a bird's eye perspective that I've noticed in this campaign is, and I think this can apply to like a lot of workers, maybe a lot of younger workers too, is that, a lot of people think, okay, union organizing, like somebody that's like in a coal mine or something. And that isn't necessarily the case. So use your own tools, use what you do as an individual. Why they've been kicking the butt of this big, powerful company is because there are a bunch of young people that are using social media really well. Okay, so use social media in workplaces to connect with people. Actually, social media provides a lot of protections because your concerted activity, even if you're not in a union, as long as there's two people. So like say you're in a text conversation with the coworker, well, there's obviously two people involved. And so even if it was discovered that you're texting about a union, theoretically, the law protects you from doing that. They're not allowed to retaliate. If they do, you gotta find one of me or something. But so the point is that labor organizing is what you make. And so if you're really active on social media and like just how the workers behind me have used that, use that. The other thing that social media provides is say like, okay, we're texting, we got a couple of people interested. Maybe we even like, we could set up like a Zoom chat or another type of chat. And then everybody can talk about the union and their perspectives, not on the shop floor or whatever you want to call it, but outside in their own comfy environments. It's conducive to team building in that way. So I guess the point is like, communicate how you communicate, right? There's nothing preventing you from using the tools that you use in your own life to forward the unionization effort as well. And then the other thing is there are, in terms of unionizing, you need to get the card authorization, so you need to have 30%. There are administrative steps, but believe me, any union wants a phone call saying, hey, I'm interested in organizing this workplace. And if they don't get back to you, you call the next one because there's people out there that are their job is to do that. So outreach, there's a lot of people on your side, even outreach to some like these people, and there's resources there to organize. So,
I'm teaching a course how to form a union online
there you
too.
go, Cathy.
Yeah. Connor has
5 minutes left, and so we should get somebody from another part of the room.
All right, Connor, quick.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, what effects do you think that the initial collective bargaining agreement will have on future agreements at other stores? Are you considering the potential precedent it might set for other agreements? And for those in Memphis or Ithaca, are you paying attention to that at all?
We do have like a few things that like our store specifically like came up with, and we are just like keeping them as options for other people to put in their contract. but we're not like doing a universal contract of any sort. We're not standardizing it, so we're just having the option out there.
Elmwood has shared and Genesee have made all of our proposals thus far public. The non-economics are incredibly important, as important, I would say, as the economics in terms of just cause and rights to organize and things that need to be put into place in order to allow this movement to continue to go and grow and make sure that we're protected. It's a challenge, but a great challenge to have, because the whole point of us doing this was to allow people's voices to be heard. So to say, this is the contract because Elmwood decided this was the contract and now this needs to be the contract for all 9,000 corporate stores in the United States would go completely against what we're trying to do here. You know, we don't want to replace corporate's voice with the voice of one store. What we do want to do is make sure that there's a level of consistency that doesn't allow the company to use one contract at one store against another store. So that's our job. And, you know, that's our job to establish that sort of national level of communication. And that's something that's already in the process. And it's amazing. And it's allowed us to have input from stores across the country and things that come up where you're like, oh, that wasn't even something we considered, because that's not something that necessarily we have to deal with all the time, but it should absolutely be something that goes into this contract. So I'm told, and this is coming from someone with zero experience in doing any of this until this moment, that this is a very unique situation that we find ourselves in. And so we're growing and we're learning, and hopefully we're going to end up doing things correctly and end up with something that people can be proud of.
Okay, so first of all, just a reminder that next Friday, we're gonna have our second union days. It's gonna be from 2:30 to 4. So that question regarding graduate student organizing, if you want more of an answer or more of a discussion, come to that, because we're actually gonna have a student coming from Santa Cruz who's part of the Wildcat Strikes of 2020. So shameless plug there for union days.
And the other two.
And also, we're also gonna have a worker from REI, and as well a worker who is part of Google and are part of the Alphabet Workers Union as well. So bring your friends.
Bring your engineering friends.
All of them. So basically, I have a question for the Ithaca workers and also Memphis. I want to know, how do you navigate being inspired by what the workers at Buffalo were doing and what people were doing nationwide, while also navigating the space of like real fear? Because when you're organizing, like what you said, like we know that it's illegal to fire you, but clearly these companies are doing it anyways. So how do you navigate through the fear of being both inspired, and because all of you are speaking in ways that I think I speak for many of us when I say that it's clearly you're the face of the new labor movement and the new leaders. So how are you navigating that space? And my last question for everyone, what can we do as a community to support you all? Thank you.
So to speak to inspiration from what Buffalo and everyone was doing, it was pretty easy to be inspired by that because everybody was immediately on your side, of course. So once we saw that happening at Starbucks, it was pretty easy. And to speak to like the fear of retaliation, as soon as you get like one person on board, you already feel that sense of solidarity. And it's a lot harder to like retaliate or fire 2 people than it is one person. So once I started speaking to everybody and understanding that everybody was on board, that fear dissipated. Can you speak to how they could support it?
Did you want to say something?
I was gonna say with us, Starbucks kind of used us as a fear tactic. They fired 7 employees, and Starbucks isn't known to fire anybody for any reason at all.
It's very
you have to leave yourself. And so for them to fire 7 employees that did not have any bad work behavior, any ratchet at all, and to just turn around, no coaching, no talking, anything, just straight, you're fired now. It was kind of shocking. Our whole store did go into a shock, and it was like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? Because the people that were fired were the most talkative, the most out loud people. We were the ones that were comforting other people, making sure they were okay. And for us to not be there anymore, they were like, scared. And they were like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And so what the Memphis 7 have been doing is we stay, in that open communication. We do have a group chat and we talk to the whole store, well, majority of the store that's, because they want this union. And even like the new partners, like I said, we open them up with open arms. And so we just do a lot of encouraging, and we go and visit them, and we go speak with them, and we go tip them really big, and we protest outside. And then when they get off of work, they walk straight from out the building and come join the picking line. So that also is like boosts the morale a lot too.
I think we're out of time. I think how we can help you is by bringing you here and giving you a big round of applause. Thank you guys so much. You're such a great audience. ILR, I'm super proud and feel verklempt about this whole thing. Thanks so much, you guys, for coming. This is great. All right, goodbye.